So it can get sophisticated, or it can be relatively simple, but those are, you know, some of the strategies. For federal income taxes, state income taxes, when a person dies, up until the date of death, if the person died today on July 28th, you would file an individual return for that person, and then effectively from the, up until the 27th, I guess, and the 28th forward, the estate is created. And the estate is a taxable entity for income tax purposes, so the estate, while the estate is open, is going to earn interest and dividends and capital gains. You're going to sell assets out of the estate, so the estate is going to file income tax returns also. What the government did, because they lost out on the estate tax revenue for this year in 2010, what they imposed was a change in the step-up in basis rules. What's a step-up in basis? What a step-up in basis is if, say, Mr. Steinbrenner bought a house for $100,000 back in 1970, okay, and it's worth $1 million today, okay? Normally, when you passed away and you own that property, for income tax purposes flowing to the estate, you would get a step up in basis as of the fair market value. So for income tax purposes, not estate tax purposes, there would be, on the sale of that property by the estate, there would be no income tax on it. However, because they lost out on the federal estate tax benefit this year in 2010, they said, well, maybe we can grab some of this income tax. So for 2010 only, if you're a single person and your estate is over $1.3 million, we're going to disallow that step up in basis. If you're a married person and the estate for the surviving spouse is over $3.3 million, then you will also have to deal with losing that step up in basis. So there's some different rules for just this year in 2010, but you need to understand it's going to come back with a vengeance next year. So 2011, if you haven't done anything to protect against those taxes, you need to think about that. You need to make sure that you've put a plan in place, and you need to review that plan. More often than not, I have people that come in all the time and they say, well, you know, mom and dad are all set. They're all set. They set up a trust, they've got a trust. And maybe they created the trust in 1980 or 85 or 1990. What you could do back then, you cannot do today. So there's a lot of different motivations for setting up trusts and setting up certain instruments, but you need to constantly review it and constantly look at what your motivations are for doing certain things. When I got out of law school in 1988, the Massachusetts estate tax limit was $200,000. Federal estate tax was $600,000. So a big motivation back then was setting up these trusts to avoid tax. Last few years, we're at $3.5 million and $1 million, so for a lot of people who are lower income or middle income, that wasn't really a concern. So they may have had different instruments created that they had control over, where the more likely concern or more likely problem for them would be Medicaid eligibility. What happens, okay, and as we know, as people get older, 50 to 67% of all people as they get older need either a short-term or long-term care stay in a nursing home or have people come to the house. So if that happens, and I end up having to pay $300 a day to a nursing home, my estate is going to get spent down extremely quickly. And that wasn't my plan when I wrote that will and gave everything to my surviving spouse and to my 2 kids. That wasn't my plan. I didn't want to give it to Cedar Glen or to, you know, Masconomet. My plan was to keep it. So what can I do? I have to work on keeping it. Parents, grandparents, you need to look at and see what the rules are. The rules are constantly changing, so you need to keep up with those things. Right now, there's a 5-year look back for all transfers from Medicaid eligibility. So what the nursing home is trying to prevent, and what Mass Health and what Medicaid is trying to prevent, is you giving away your assets at the door and saying, I'm eligible for free care. They're going to say, we're going to look back and see what you've done the last 5 years to make sure you're not divesting yourself of those assets. We're going to penalize you for that divestment. The average cost of a nursing home in Massachusetts, from Gloucester to Canton to Springfield, is $274 a day, according to Mass Medicaid, to Mass Health. So that's the average cost, and that's the penalty devised. So what do? We use gifts, we use trust, we give up the control. The whole issue with all 3 of these things is control. If you control an asset, we're going to tax you on it, we're going to treat it as yours, it's countable for Medicaid purposes. At some point, if your plan is to give up that control and pass it to your kids, perhaps you do that transfer before you die, and you rent back the house from the kids. So there's different things, there's different opportunities that can be explored. Long-term care insurance is a great vehicle that provides insurance for this type of problem. You've all paid auto insurance, you've all paid homeowners insurance for years. Maybe you had a claim or two, but you paid that premium to guard against that risk. Long-term care insurance provides protection against the risk of you're going to need that type of long-term care in a facility or someone coming to your house. We're all living longer. I mean, that's the issue. Basic estate planning tools to help with these: wills and trusts, verbal powers of attorney, healthcare proxy, HIPAA authorization. These are simple tools, along with the homestead, the 5 basic tools that everyone should have. That's going to cover them when they pass away, but also, more importantly, if something should happen to them before they die and they become disabled and they can't write checks, they can't speak, they can't do anything with their accounts. If that's the case, now we have to go to probate court. We need to get someone appointed the guardian and the conservator of that person. I'm getting the high sign, so that's going to be my spiel for this evening, but I'm going to turn it over to George Koutsos. George is here speaking on behalf of Acomi Benefits this evening. Acomi Benefits is a benefit company for small businesses on the North Shore and in Massachusetts. He offers a wide variety of benefits that he's going to explore with you this evening.
Thank you, Jim.